was
If I
fine.
was going to make a beautiful woman, it would look just like both of y'all.
Oh,
God
I
didn't
did.
tell me I could do that.
There you go.
And I've left my billfold in the car.
Welcome to the Centerville Press. My name is Mike Hobson, and today we're having an opportunity to talk with two local Bibb County residents from up in the Briarfield area, who most of you who are watching this probably already know. To my left here is April Weaver, Senator April Weaver of the Bibb County Senate District 14, and her mother, Patricia Clark, is sitting over here making sure we do this right. So today we're going to talk about their recollections of the Bibb County Brent Centerville tornado that passed through here on May 27th, 1973, and came right through their front yard or through their front door. So we're going to talk about their experience with that tornado. So welcome to the Centerville Press.
Thanks for having us.
April and Pat.
Thank you.
Now, I know they're both nervous about having video made, so we're not paying attention to that. April's an old pro. Pat is is a little
A
shy.
young pro?
She's a little shy this morning, but we're going to ask her and April both a few questions. So, for the benefit of those who do not know you, tell us who you are, who your family is, who you're connected to, children and names, and mother and parents' name, and just familiarize anybody who doesn't know you at all with your connection to Bibb County and this event we're going to talk about.
So I'm April Weaver, State Senator, District 14. My mother, Pat Clark. We both live in the 6 Mile community where we have both lived most all of our lives. Mom moved there in 1964 when she and Dad got married. I've lived there most of my life. And our connection to the Brent tornado is, it started in Demopolis, Greensboro, moved to Brent, Centerville. And then between Centerville and Montevallo, it actually hit in 6 Mile, which is where we live. And our house at that time was our house, my grandmother's house, and then my grandparents' former grocery store, the old Clark's grocery store that my dad had actually started the Clark tractor business in back in the 60s. And the location of that was what most people now know as the Bulldog Bend Road and 25 there. And it was in the field nearly across from that.
Okay. So the remains of the store, the Clark Grocery, is anything there?
There's
now?
nothing.
Nothing there?
So if
Okay.
you go there now, if you're familiar with the house where I grew up, there in 6 Mile where Mom used to live, my uncle lives there now, that house, you go over the hill and it's the field that's on the right
Okay.
there.
And that's within sight of the Clark Tractor building that is there.
Nope.
No, it's
So
not-
Clark
is it?
Tractor is more towards Centerville. The house where I grew up is on the right. You would go over the hill towards Montevallo.
Oh, okay.
And it's the field that's fenced now on the right before you get to the Bulldog Bend Road.
Okay.
But there's nothing there now.
All right. So in 1973, do you remember how old you were?
I was 2. Just a baby.
So I have some pictures here.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that's you in that picture.
That is.
Tell me about that picture.
So in that picture, and I'm not sure if you can see that or not, that is Mom holding me where our house stood before the tornado came through 6 Mile
Okay.
that day.
Now, Pat, do you remember, I know that I'm not supposed to ask how old you are now, and I wouldn't ask that at all.
Well,
But do you remember how old you were at that time?
Well, I'm 80 now, so you can subtract 1973 from it.
Okay,
So-
I'll have my secretary do that math. So tell me what you remember about that morning, because I know April, I see her in the picture there. I don't know what recollections you have.
So this picture is actually this picture, and this might be a better picture for your viewers to
Yeah.
see. So you can see there's absolutely nothing left
I think there's one seal left.
of our house.
And a
that day.
fishing pole that had been stuck up under there.
Well, where were you when the tornado came through?
We were in Miss Clark's.
But the story before that is, so my parents had on our farm a pond with a little cabin, a place where people would gather to cook out and just sit around and enjoy each other's company there in the community. So that Sunday afternoon, there had been a group over at our pond for a cookout, and Mom remembers that there were some interesting things related to nature that happened at that point, because now we have a lot of weather alerts, we have a lot of things that tell us a tornado is on the way. Back then we didn't have anything to tell us that. So they had been over at our pond with a group cooking. My aunt had been there. My grandmother had been there. A lot of other
We had some friends from Mississippi.
were there, and they were telling me that there were some strange things that happened.
Well, I remember Dad's bull. He was leading, and he came across the dam with all the cows following him. It was the strangest thing, and he was like mooing, and so one of the people there said, "Oh, we are upsetting the cows," and one of us, somebody said, "No, we're over here all the time. That would not be it." But they were single file, and they came right by us and went down in the holler.
Really?
And everybody was saying, we're upsetting the cows. And, I guess they had more sense than we did as far as knowing what was coming. But we didn't lose not one. Bob had hundreds probably over there and did not lose one.
Not an animal.
No,
Was lost.
because they all went down for shelter, single file. So after that, it was getting cloudy, but nobody, of course, knew the tornado was on the way. But I had gone home with my grandmother. They cleaned up, and they came to my grandmother's house to pick me up, which is the
why
reason
we were there.
that we were not in this
that.
house when the tornado came.
Because we never left our house for any bad weather or anything, but we walked up there to get April.
So when they got home, they walked to my grandmother's house to get me, and this is my grandmother's house where
that's
we
your
were.
grandmother's house.
So you can see our house was here,
And this is part of our house right
and
here.
it put our house basically on top of my grandmother's house, and we were in this house. Actually, this picture shows a little bit better view of where we were. That's where we were.
There's the water tower.
Yeah. So there was a water tower that stood outside of the grocery store in their house, and you can see part of it there. But in this area, and Mom can tell you more about it, but when they got to the house to pick me up, the weather started getting bad, and
Miss Clark had a window fan. Back then, very few people had air conditioning. We had it in our little house, but she had a window fan, and the window fan it was going like 90 miles an hour. I've never seen a fan go that fast. And then just in a few minutes, the house started popping and cracking, like pressure. And Bob said, "Mother, I think he's fixing." Well, she was in there. She had a kerosene lamp, and the lights had gone out. And she was cutting the wick on that kerosene lamp, and that's when the fan started going and the wall started popping and cracking. And he said, "Mother, I think it's fixing to get bad. Where should we go?" And she said, "Son, I've always heard the middle room." And we went right in the middle room.
which was the bedroom. And what I remember, of course, I was very young, but I remember, the old chenille bedspreads that had the little bumps on it. I remember that there was one of those chenille bedspreads on that bed that I was hanging on to, even
you
though
were
Mom was
chewing.
holding me.
You probably chewed on it.
And
April's first words were,
What?
when it all settled down, she looked at me and she said, "Mama, what'd that rain do?" And then we still talk about
I
that.
just remember Mom holding me, and then, like she said, all the popping and stuff, and then the roof flew off, and rain and, weather, and then everything falling in on us. And I remember my grandmother pulling her.
I stood up with April, and then she said, "Pat, get down." And she stood up to pull me down, and a board hit her across the head. But
It's your mother.
Bob's mother, Miss Clark.
Yeah. So there was an iron bed in that room, and just as a child, I remember them pushing me down near that iron bed, and everybody being on top of me. And then
You
of
really
course,
don't have time to think.
Right.
It's just like,
It's just like that.
And it was so calm after everything settled. It was just like nothing had happened. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. but you're still sort of in shock too. You just wondered, oh, what's going to be next? You don't know if it's gone or you're just waiting for the next one.
So
Right.
one of the things that we mentioned when we were outside talking that you may have heard us mention was we were in the middle bedroom, and toward the back of the house there was a dining room. And even though everything looked like this and we were crawling out of this rubble and trying to get out, as we were going out, what she remembers is there were no walls, but there was the china cabinet in the dining room. And
Standing there.
And the china cabinet was still standing with
Standing
the
there.
china intact.
Right at the edge of the wall, and not a wall. Most amazing thing. It's
Yeah, it
hard to
doesn't look
believe.
like in this picture that there would be anything
Right.
standing inside that house.
So we were obviously very blessed to, number one, not have any bad injuries, but to walk out of that alive or to crawl out of that alive.
Right.
We were in that rubble. We were able to get out. And like Mom and I were talking last night, I said, I don't really remember what happened when we were able to get out of that. And the first thing they started looking for was a vehicle or a car. But
They were all had been thrown around, but Bobby said, I just hope there's something here that will crank and run.
so then, of course, all of the roads were closed because Highway 25 had trees all over it. So, again, technology was certainly not what it is today. There were no cell phones. There were no anything like that. So our family members thought that we had all been killed because nobody was able to get in there to us or to come help, and nobody knew where we were or our condition.
Right.
So I talked to Mr. Tommy Campbell last week when we were talking. He also survived this tornado in 6 Mile, and he was saying to me that they were trying to get in to us. I know that my aunt and some other people were on the Montevallo side trying to get in. We also had friends and our community members on the side towards Centerville trying to get in. And somehow we were able to go across a field and not use the highways, but my dad had lived there his whole life, so he knew how to navigate and get us out of there to a place where that we could get help.
The tornado, I know it touched down in Brent, and there was some damage in Centerville around the hospital. But from there towards your house, was the tornado on the ground anywhere? Do you recall?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that.
So how much damage was there around you,
So
around that house, other houses?
It was the lake where we'd been that day. It was all gone, and,
So-
and it went through Golfer's Trail. It came up that way, went across Golfer's Trail.
So complete devastation in our area. I mean, look at that.
Right.
In 1 second, we were homeless. We lost everything we had. Not only me, my grandmother, and it happens fast.
Exactly. Well, how long was it before anybody could get in there to where you were?
Bobby, we went to Mr. Morgan and Miss Myrtle Lovejoy's house.
Which is just across from the 6 Mile Creek
6 Mile
Bridge.
Creek Bridge.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty good walk from.
No, we were in.
You were in a car.
We were
They
in
found a
Bobby's-
car that would
yeah.
crank.
Okay.
I think we were in Bobby's truck because we had a car in the truck, and Bobby had just bought that truck a few weeks before. But anyway, I just can't really remember. I just know it took us a while to get there, but we got out of the vehicle and went in of course, everybody was grabbing and hugging us. When we pulled up, they said, we thought y'all were dead.
If they'd seen your house, they would have
Yeah.
been probably pretty sure
Yeah,
of it.
and so everybody was grabbing and hugging and crying, and then we lived with my parents in Montevallo for about 3 months or 2.5 months till we could get situated, and then we started building the house we have now.
So an interesting fact that goes along with that. 30 years ago, I was doing clinicals in nursing school. and did some clinicals at what was then Bessemer Caraway, which I think is now UAB West. So I was taking care of this elderly woman who, she asked me where I was from, and I told her, and she said, "Oh goodness, I used to volunteer for the Red Cross." And at some point in the 70s, I volunteered near there for a tornado. And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm very familiar with that tornado." And she said, "Well, where did you live?" And I explained to her the houses that we were in. And she said, "You were that little girl that was in that rubble. I always wondered what happened to you." So at that point in life, it had come full circle for us, because I guess as a part of the Red Cross, she had been there the day that we all needed help. And then as a nursing student, I took care of her. So it's a small world.
So how did y'all go about getting this mess cleaned up so you could restart on rebuilding?
Bob
How'd
got
you do
somebody with bulldozer and dump truck, and I just remember them coming in and just cleaning it all up.
that? So y'all had to take care of it all yourself with no outside assistance.
It's a very long process.
Right.
But it was one of those things that, when you lose everything, you don't have anywhere to go but up. So when you lose everything like that, and again, your home, all your belongings, everything you have, you just have to be resilient, and you just have to continue to rebuild and get back on track.
Right. So was anybody else in the 6 Mile community that lost their home that you can recall who they were?
Tommy Campbell and his family, and I guess us now. Kermit and Edna Stevens, they lost part of their house. They had added on an addition, and the original part stayed, and the addition, they lost it. But they still had living quarters, and all that they could. It was just the new part that was torn off.
So many of those residents of 6 Mile that were alive 50 years ago when this happened, they've all passed away now, or a majority of them have. And so it's, as we were searching for people who lived through that, I mean, there's still some, but a lot of the older people there in the community.
Well, I guess I'm one of the older now. Oh, mercy.
Well, I won't touch that. So, was anybody else injured in that community that you recall?
Not that we know of. And if Miss Clark had her standing up to pull me down.
Did she have a serious injury? You said she got hit in the head.
We had to take her that night to be taken care of, Then they fixed her up.
But she
sent her home.
She recovered from that, okay.
And I mean, besides minor injuries, of course, I think Mom had a nail to her leg,
yeah,
and
when we were trying to get out.
But of course, when you're trying to get out of something like that, and you only have
you don't know which way to go. You wonder which way's out. Just trying to get everything off of you.
Well, was it by the time this came through? Was it still daylight, or was it dark?
It was
at that time.
Our electricity went off at 7:35, and it was still daylight, a little daylight.
Still had a little bit of light, so you could see to get out.
I know when we got out of this, I could not wait to come around the house to see how much of our house was left. I assumed that, there was some of it left, and I just can remember the shock of looking and seeing there wasn't a piece of our house left.
So the other thing that she's had for a long, long time is the electricity went off at, did you say 7:35? Mm-hmm. And the stove, which is in this rubble at some point when they were clearing all of the debris, someone gave her the clock off the stove that had stopped at 7:35.
I still have that.
And she still has it.
And Bob had sewed calves the week before and had not deposited the check. And I don't know, a week or so after.
It was laying on the counter.
It was laying on the counter in our house. And he had stopped payment on it because he thought, that check, I wonder where it is. And we have that check. Someone brought it. It's in pretty bad shape, but we have the check that someone found, and I'm April asked me where was it found, and I can't, but it was way off somewhere.
For some reason, I think it was somewhere on the other side of Shelby County, but I'm not sure. We don't remember.
You know, they
It
found
was-
a bunch of Brent things in Calera, and I can't, if I say it, it might be wrong, so, but I know it was
It traveled
brought
a
to
long
us.
way.
Did you recover any of your keepsakes from the house, or did you, like photographs and scrapbooks and Bibles and family things?
The albums we had, like the first pages, the front and back, was so much water, and some of the middle we saved, but I mean our things were just all in the woods everywhere, you know, just scattered everywhere.
Right. Well, with no roof on the house, I guess there's nothing to keep it there.
Right. So one other thing that I still have, there is a blue and white rabbit that, do you remember that rabbit? That I had, that someone brought back to me, and he has lived through quite a trip with that.
Oh, I know.
But
the
when-
bank, your Snoopy bank.
Yeah. And so when we moved into our new house in 1974, it has a basement in it. So every time, we used to always laugh because it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then. I was so traumatized every time it would thunder. I would take that rabbit that had also lived through the tornado and some of my other favorite things, and I would stick them in my pillow and run downstairs with them every time it thundered. So even 50 years later, I can tell you I'm still very leery when it comes to the weather, and very nervous when tornadoes come. So we
It
are,
only takes one.
yeah.
So you pay attention to the weather forecast.
Oh, we absolutely do, and we are firm believers in paying attention to the weather and the things that are going on, because as you see, it can happen very fast.
Have you got a safe place to go over where you live now?
Absolutely, we both have basements in our houses. When you rebuild after living through something like that, it's always top of mind to think about a safe place.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, what would you say about the character of the community, the Briarfield 6 Mile community,
So we are
after the tornado?
We are a very, very close community, and I will tell you, our community came together like none other. Everybody was so good to us, and just all pitched in to help clean up. And you probably remember a little bit more of that than
No,
I
I
do.
just know everybody was there to help.
And we
You
are very
don't know who
thankful
your
for
friends
that.
are till something like this happens, and it's amazing.
People are good.
Was there?
Glad to hear it.
I don't even know if Bibb County had any ambulance or first responders at that period of time. I wouldn't think so. So,
I remember, Mike, when I first came here, Austin Levert had an old surplus Air Force van that was serving as an ambulance
right.
at the time I came here in 1978. So I would assume there wasn't
There
an
wasn't,
ambulance service at the time of the tornado.
So if you got to a hospital for medical treatment, you got there yourself, or somebody had to carry you. So your mother-in-law, right?
We
That-
carried
that
her that night
You took her
when we went to Montevideo.
in your own car for treatment, right?
Yeah.
I think we're all very glad that little girl came out all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that has had some impact on you and the career choices that you've made since then. Does that affect how you think about service organizations, and as it relates to your current job and what you do for Bibb County? Does that have some impact on your long-term thinking?
That's kind of a loaded question there, sir. Certainly when you live through something like that and you come out and you're not injured, and I guess number one, you're still alive after coming through something like that. It makes you go, what is my greater purpose, and why am I here, and what do I need to do? So, of course, as I think through things like that, I always try to think what am I supposed to be doing? So, you know, you and I have talked about this some, but I don't really choose my path. We look back at where I've been politically, coming through the House and then having a little bit of road bump there, and then having the opportunity to get a presidential appointment to work for President Trump for that year, and then after the election being a presidential appointee, thinking, what am I going to do now? When I got finished with my federal service, there was a vacancy for this a special election and a vacancy for the seat that I currently am in.
Right.
So I think you and I have talked about it some.
That's right.
I don't really feel like I choose my own path. I just feel like the Lord just puts me in places where I need to serve, and hopefully I'll have sense enough to do what I'm supposed to be doing while I'm there.
Well, maybe something reaches out for you and chooses you for jobs where you'll be in a position to help remedy problems like we had back then. And I'm talking about not having responder services versus where we are today, where Bibb County, because of things that have happened economically and through efforts made by you and others to better equip the county with fire protection, with first responder protection, and of course with ambulances and medical care, which I know that's where your heart is. Bibb County's in a much better position if something happens to us today. In 1973, I guess we were helpless, pretty much, except for your neighbors and the people who lived around you. What would you do without them?
Yeah, well,
Right.
you know, there just wasn't a whole lot of help back then that you could go to, and we were not insured. I never will forget, we had $2,500 insurance, and but we have plenty of insurance now, but back then it just didn't seem like it was a big deal,
Right.
And they were young married couple
Yeah.
just starting out, and like she said, there was a lot of money back then.
And so that's all we had,
A lot of money now.
insurance wise. And like I said, there's not all the programs. There wasn't all the programs that's out there now. You
Right.
know.
Yeah, and having had more tornadoes, not only in my district, the one at Ebenezer Road not too long ago, the one in Eolin
Right.
several years ago, and a lot of tornado damage in areas that are close to my district. I can tell you I am very, very aware of the needs of people who live through things such as this, and as you know, I'm very committed to making sure that that things are in place to help people when they're in need.
Well, I know it's something that we can never forget about in Bibb County. It looks like we still are in the pathway of a lot of storms that seem to track right through this same direction that you described about this event. It comes from down south of Brent, from Greensboro to Memphis area, and almost 90% of them come right in the.
I think there's a railroad that goes through here that they follow.
Right, it's all in the direction of Brent and Centerville, and then right across Brent and Centerville up to 6 Mile and Briarfield. That's where they all seem like they want to go. Sometimes they take a detour and they go this way or they go that way, but the majority of them seem to be headed for us every time there's a storm.
So I can tell you, anytime one starts in Greensboro, we always pay very close attention.
Yep. If it's Greene County or Hale County, that we start.
You take
watching.
note, don't you?
We
We
do.
start watching.
We do.
And when James Spann says 6 Mile, that's when
You
we
know,
really.
I have been thinking a lot about the fact that with the Brent tornado and what happened with y'all also, if you wanted to count the good things that came out of it, the sense of community that people have, that bond of a shared experience that bonds people together in a way that's as deep as family, that's a good thing. And also out of this whole event, you mentioned James Spann. I've been thinking about it a lot since I've started these interviews. There was a time, like you said earlier, you didn't have the kind of weather reporting and radar and all those good things that we have today, that you can basically watch them as they're moving if your electricity's on, of course. But James Spann, I remember, and I think y'all probably do too, there was a time TV stations did not stay live on the air during inclement weather. It wasn't priority to them.
Right.
Everybody wanted to watch TV.
But there was a gentleman that changed all that. His name's James Spann, and he
Exactly
was
right.
inspired by what he saw and what he experienced when he came to Brent, Alabama, and Bibb County, Alabama, during that tornado. So out of that bad thing, there's no telling how many lives have been saved because of the work that James Spann did in working through getting broadcasters to pay more attention to the fact that during inclement weather, they needed to stay on the air and keep people apprised of what's happening. And I think that there's no way to measure it, but a lot of people have been saved because of the fire that I think the Lord put in him back many years ago when the tornado came through Brent.
I think that you're absolutely correct, and I think I agree with you in every sense of what you just said. I think that he has done great work, and having been involved in this tornado, I think, like you said, it just started a trend for something new, and there's no telling how many lives have been saved because of him and his work.
I think you're right.
And I hope as you go around your district that you will promote people buying weather radios, not relying on outside sirens, because they are only for people who are outside in close proximity. And James Spann stresses that in all the schools, in all of his speaking engagements. Buy a $50 or a $30 weather radio. Program it to your polygon, your county, and be weather alert.
Right.
I mean,
and I totally agree with you in that. And also, I think that our local county people are doing a great job. I know on my phone, I have the alert
Yeah, I get it too.
where I get the text and the call. And anytime we have something in our area, even if I'm in Montgomery or if I'm out of state, I get the alert and I call home and I say, y'all pay attention. And I think that is a great service, and I think that they're doing a great job with that. It actually helped us to know when the tornado came through Briarfield at Ebenezer Road not too long ago. Daryl and I were both at home, and you were talking about community and service and what you do after you live through something like that. Once we knew where the tornado was, as you know, Daryl is a doctor and spent the first part of his career in trauma and as an ER doctor. I'm a nurse. So when we knew that tornado had gone through our community, the first thing that we did is it passed by and we opened our door and we saw that everything in our area was okay. We found out that Mom was okay and that people right around us were okay, and we went straight to that area. And I know it's always difficult when people start responding, but I think the other thing that's been really good is we have such structure now. And I know that night that the tornado hit Briarfield, the Briarfield Fire and Rescue set up a communication point, and the community knew to go right there to that point for them to say, I need your help here. And the instant command structure that I don't think we had back then is now in place, and it works fabulously.
The volunteer first responder group that you've got in your community is outstanding. I've never seen one better. They're just outstanding people. And I think it's kind of interesting too that nearly everybody we interview, and I think Mike would agree with this, they when I say that that day was the day that time stood still, they understand that statement, because in their mind it was just a few days ago, because all the pictures are in there. Everything that you experienced is still there, just like it was yesterday. And during the moment when you crawled out of that house, I'm pretty sure you thought, something's happened. Time has stopped. Everything is different now. Everything that we knew about our lives and our schedules and all these other things, it's all stopped, and everything is different now. So time does kind of stand still in all that, doesn't it?
It does, and certainly it was very different for us. And the visual reminder of time standing still is that clock for her. Like I said, she still has that clock. And if you ever need a visual reminder,
I'll try to dig that out for you. Find
Thank
it.
you.
It's in the basement somewhere. But Bobby he said, I don't understand why you want that clock. I said,
I do.
I want that clock.
Because time stood still, didn't it?
it did.
That's right.
another thing that I think is really significant and beneficial that has come out of all of this not just our county EMS, but the community storm shelters. And opening those early and encouraging people to go there, especially people living in trailers.
Certainly. I agree.
Funding for that has really been helpful too.
It would be great if the generations coming behind us could have the sense of community that we have been bonded to in our community, and the things that make us have that strong affinity toward one another, that I think social media has not contributed to that in the way that people might think it does. Until you sit down with someone and look in their eyes and hear their story, you really don't know them that well.
It's not much rocking on the front porch anymore, is there?
Not much.
Well, we appreciate both of y'all coming and sharing your remembrances, your recollections of this day. And I'll be sure to pay attention to what cows are doing from now on.
right.
Whenever,
You do that.
whenever there's bad weather
You do that.
coming in. That's the only warning you got was the cows, right?
And they had more sense than we did.
Right, okay.
Amazing.
All right,
Thank you for having us.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
All right.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
God bless you.
Thank you.